Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. And hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 4, The Women, from verses 45 to 51. A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. Wallahu a'lamu bi'a'da'ikum, wa kafa billahi waliyan, wa kafa billahi nasira. But God knows your enemies best. God is sufficient as a protector, and God is sufficient as a supporter. من الذين هادوا يحرفون الكلم عن مواضعه ويقولون سمعنا وعصينا واسمع غير مسمع وراعنا لينا بألسنتهم وطعنا في الدين ولو أنهم قالوا سمعنا وأطعنا واسمع وانظرنا لكان خيرا لهم وأقوم ولكن لعنهم الله بكفرهم فلا يؤمنون إلا قليلا. Among the Jews are some who take words out of context and say, we hear and we disobey, and hear without listening, and observe us, twisting with their tongues and slandering the religion. Had they said, we hear and obey and listen and give us your attention, it would have been better for them and more upright. But God has cursed them for their disbelief. They do not believe except a little. يا أيها الذين أوتوا الكتاب آمنوا بما نزلنا مصدقا لما معكم من قبل أن نطمس وجوها فنردها على أدبارها أو نلعنهم كما لعنا أصحاب السبت وكان أمر الله مفعولا. O you who were given the book, believe in what was sent down, confirming what you have, before we obliterate faces and turn them inside out, or curse them as we cursed the Sabbath breakers. The command of God is always done. إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء ومن يشرك بالله فقد افترى إثما عظيما. God does not forgive association with him, but he forgives anything less than that to whomever he wills. Whoever associates anything with God has devised the monstrous sin. ألم تر إلى الذين يزكون أنفسهم بل الله يزكي من يشاء والله ولا يظلمون فتيلا. Have you not considered those who claim purity for themselves? Rather, God purifies whom he wills, and they will not be wronged a whit. انظر كيف يفترون على الله الكذب وكفى به إثما مبينا. See how they devise lies against God. That alone is an outright sin. ألم تر إلى الذين أوتوا نصيبا من الكتاب يؤمنون بالجبت والطاغوت ويقولون للذين كفروا هؤلاء أهدى من الذين آمنوا سبيلا. Have you not considered those who were given a share of the book? They believe in superstition and evil powers, and say of those who disbelieve, these are better guided on the way than the believers. Sadaqallah al-Azim. God the Great said the truth. One thing that I realized in this translation, maybe why I took a quick break, I don't think God is saying Sama'na, walau annahum qalu bi'alsinatihim. Well, they're saying Ra'ina, which the Talal translated as observe us, but rather it isn't observe us. Ra'ina means like shepherd us. And this is something that we're not supposed to say in the religion. God does not want sheep. We're not cattle for somebody to come around and shepherd us. Because when people are stating like the prophet said that you're the shepherd of your family, or that Jesus is the shepherd, or the Lord is the shepherd, stuff of that nature, it actually diminishes it downplays the blessings and the favors that God has given upon you as a human being. God did not create you as cattle, and you do not need a shepherd. You need someone to observe you. And when they're observing you, they are the ones who are going to be correcting you, because they are in a position where they understand the world a little differently than you. So it's going to push you to be someone better than who you are. The Quran is truly sitting in that position, where you are supposed to sit and listen to what the Quran is saying and obeying it. And then there are individuals, messengers and prophets and other people who are attached to God, where they're capable of understanding the Quran a little better than you, and therefore they're capable of telling you the things that would benefit you. And as we see here, God is telling us that he's aware of our enemies, those that want to diminish the light of God, those that want to diminish the message of God. The message of God came is just so that we could have such a healthy mindset, so that things don't truly bother us. And if they're bothering us, we understand why they're bothering us. And it's just more so of a persistence and an annoyance rather than you being upset or depressed about certain things. It's just because the way that you perceive your God and the way that you're so attached to God that truly things don't matter to you in that sense. So God is the one who's protecting us from those that do not understand such things in regards to what the Quran is preaching and what the Quran is telling us. And he's saying to us that even as a general statement, of course, this is God is talking in a general form. It does not necessitate that every Jew is a person that is doing these actions, but some of them that are adhering to the curriculum, they end up doing these things. It's just like when I say, for example, like Sunnis commit shirk or idolatry, does not mean that every Sunni right now is committing idolatry because of it goes on an individual basis. But if they start to deepen themselves and they start to dive deeper into their material, they have to start to accept certain lies and certain things about God that did not give. This is clearly said in the verses later when God states that it's a clear sin when people are saying lies about God. So they devise lies against God, and that's a huge sin. When God is telling us that he's aware of our enemies, and the ones that distort the religion, and they are not people who are adhering to the word of God, then it means that we do not need to worry about their decisions. We do not need to worry about their plans. We do not need to worry about what they're doing as long as we're actually sticking to the curriculum that we've been given. So as long as we don't start to engage them and live the same way that they're living, and sticking to the roots that God has given us and being as simple as we need to be, as God has explained to us, then they don't really bother you. They cannot hurt you. They cannot change anything. It's just because you're in a position of superiority. People find that the way that language is being presented to them, that they have to be so politically correct, even against the truth, is just so that other people's feelings won't get hurt. Unfortunately, God is not here to pamper to people's feelings. So it's not something that you need to hear it in a way for you not to get offended. If you are getting offended, is then you have to be reflecting upon yourself. And you can be offended if someone is insulting you or calling you names or pointing out things and making fun of you. Yes, that's where some people can be offensive, and that's where you can take an offense. But when God is telling you that you are, for example, a drunk, you are somebody who is drinking often and you are now addicted to alcohol, and therefore you're an alcoholic, people sometimes take that as an offense. And it's not so much as an insult. It's literally telling you your issue for you to fix it. There's a lot of individuals that when they lie and they're called a liar, they take offense. It's like the other person's insulting them when the person did not mean it in a derogatory sense, or it was it as an attack on the individual, but rather it's just an expression of what they're witnessing. And it's the same thing that happens with these individuals here, where that they are taking offense to what God is saying, but you are in a position of superiority over certain individuals. The way that you act with superiority is what makes it proper or improper. You do not need to sit in a place of arrogance, and you do not need to sit and keep pulling people down. But when a fight occurs or something that is of a conflict occurs, you need to understand that you are in a position of superiority. And if you say things that offend the other side, and when you're saying things that are within truth, then it doesn't matter how the other side felt, because you're repeating what God has said in the Quran. So if I go to an individual and I say that you're committing idolatry and idolatry is not forgiven, he's like, well, why are you calling me an idolater? That's wrong of you. Well, you're committing idolatry. It's not me insulting you. I'm not calling you a mushrik for you to feel bad about yourself, or it's like a jab at you, but rather it's for you to correct yourself. But that's why I cannot force you to believe into what is the truth if you personally cannot see it. So God states that we are witnessing some individuals that are deaf, dumb, and blind. And here you see people who are saying that we heard you, but we just didn't listen. We didn't pay attention. And this is something that you could see in a lot of conversations with individuals when it comes down to the Quran or religion and God. When you say certain things, they've clocked out. They're not paying attention to the subject matter. They're not following the argumentation. They're not following the logic. And when you ask them a question, they prove it by not being able to quote what you said, or not being able to show the perspective that you have. Yet when they ask you what are they saying, you're capable of actually repeating their position and them agreeing that you know their position. This is how you know your ears are working. As for your eyes, these individuals are not capable of seeing who they are or what the world is around them. And yet if they are seeing who they are, they're finding it difficult to change, is just because their hearts at this point is getting sealed. And this is something that we need to be scared of. We do not want to find ourselves in a position where we are showing these signs of hypocrisy, and yet when we recognize we're being hypocrites, we double down instead of just taking the better route, the easier route. Now, there's something that we've observed in nature, that many things take the least path of resistance. So they do not want to cause as much resistance just because the nature will start flowing easy. We found this with water. We found this with electricity. Anything that has a flow tends to try to take the path of least resistance. You as a human being, when you walk, you want the easiest route. You don't want to take the hardest route on purpose. And those that take the hardest route on purpose tend to go through more pain than what God has ordained for that person to have to endure. Now, when it comes down to your religion, you truly have to take the path of least resistance. Until somebody is showing you resistance, then you still have to take that path that you have to take. But if you can avoid that resistance in a way that it does not displease your God, then you should be doing that. That's why God is pressing us to be forgiving, merciful, and pardoning. And this is one of the big signs of the religion. Now, God is telling us that it is important for us to believe in this book so we do not get damned and cursed like those individuals before us. People might not understand how the curse of God works or the damnation of God. It does not necessitate for you to completely be physically destroyed. It could be that where God is not allowing you to succeed in anything or flourish, and you have very little in life, yet you think you're so important, you think that you are such in a good position, yet you're in a terrible position. The damnation of God is you being so disconnected from God that you don't even realize who you are. There's so many Christians and Jews where they think they're so pious, yet they are some of the most terrible people in the world. You can go, for example, certain adult websites where they produce pornographic material. The individual that owns that company, the CEO, one of the biggest companies, is actually a rabbi, yet he is pushing out this content that truly destroys the fabric of society. And if you look at that individual, he thinks that he's pious, that he's going to have a favor with his God. Yet this is truly what the damnation of God is where he puts you in a position where you're literally a person who's pushing out pornographic material. If this is not a curse and a damnation, then you cannot, then you truly did not understand the gravity of what this person is doing, that's going to be shown to him on a day of judgment. Now we get to a topic that is extremely deep, where God does not allow people to associate to him. So attributing something to God that is not from God is an association. Saying that there's multiple gods is an association. Attaching an idea to God, like saying that the day of judgment is not occurring or there's no resurrection, this is a form of association. Obeying the devil, as God states, this is a form of association to God. It's just because you're taking orders from something other than God, in a sense where it is now where you're following somebody. And now here you're following directly the enemy of God. So you're associating to God in what God is saying, because you're thinking that this sound in your head or these feelings, which are from the devil, that are from God, and then therefore you are failing. Now, there is something that we have to focus again on this language because of how intricate it is, that God does not forgive association. So anyone who's committing association, like you could take like Trinitarian Christians, for example, they are going to get punished no matter what. But God, he's saying that just because it's not forgiven, right, that they're going to have to stand for their sin. This is something that we have to realize, that some are going to stand for their sins on the day of judgment, and therefore they're going to hell. And some individuals, they are going to stand sometimes their problems here on earth. So they might have such a painful punishment on earth because of their associations, just because they were generally good people somewhere else. This is something that I understood as where God is saying that he does not forgive it, yet there are crimes where you have done it where you won't get a punishment. Or there are times where you are committing a crime where God is capable of forgiving it, yet you are still committing that crime. So on the day of judgment, you do not stand that crime. And there's crimes like shirk that on the day of judgment is completely not accepted from you. These are just some ways to see that maybe some people are going to go to heaven despite some of these associations that they did because of concepts like intercession, pardoning, and expiation. But it does not mean that the sin has been forgiven. It means that they're still going to stand for the sin no matter what. But this is not something that you should be banking on. This is not something that you should think that most of the individuals around you are going to find. Because association is such a bad crime that when you are told that you're associating and you've been presented the verses in front of you that you're associating, yet you are completely ignoring them and you're persisting in what you want to do, even though it was proven to you that you're committing a major sin in theology, in your way you're thinking and the way that you're approaching your life, then at that point, yes, you're most likely you're not going to find favor with your God on the day of judgment. And whatever you did, it's going to get paid back to you on earth, and then you're going to find nothing in the end. because you did not believe in the one amazing God that gave you everything. And God is telling us about a certain type of people, which is very, very clear, where they try to purify themselves and to claim on how pure they are and how great they are and such good in individuals. But yet God is saying that he purifies whom he wills. So there's individuals where they were criminals and then they start to act a little bit righteous because of them reading the Quran, yet they are still acting criminal to the people around them. But they keep trying to purify themselves by showing the people on how pure they became. Yet their actions is against what God is saying here. And God is telling us that he's the one who does the purification. He's the one who purifies your soul and purifies your mind and cleans you from your sins. And then he's capable of actually removing certain things off you and certain associations that you had, certain fears, so that you become somebody who's internally pure. These are things that you can only measure yourself because of what God has shown you, and then it gets reflected by what people keep telling you instead of you telling people certain things. Now, there is a verse here where we have to understand the gravity of this verse. There are people that have been given the book, they believe that they believe in the book, but yet they think that the ones who are disbelieving are actually more guided than the believers, because the believers live in a way that it is not so much as meshed up with the society. They try to avoid much of what the society does because they understand that what the society is doing is for their own. It's not more so for the objective of humans being one, or the objective of serving God, or the objective of understanding that there's a day of judgment. So you tend to see that the believers are mostly more disconnected from a lot of what the people tend to do. And when the certain people have been given the book that they think that they're religious, they assume that these disbelievers have a better way in life than the actual believers. And they answer to like the evil powers, and they believe in superstitions. And these evil powers could be the individuals or the governments or certain entities that are the ones who are trying to control the mass population, where they then to start to actually adhere to what these people are saying and yet protect them and start flying certain flags and thinking that they're being patriotic when they're just representing something that has nothing to do with what God has ordered you to do. There's a lot of conditioning and a lot of programming that happens to you as a child, trying to pull you to certain affiliations and certain loyalties, so that when you grow up, you're just another number for this individual or this entity that wants to cause corruption on the land. Recognizing this is when you start to disconnect from certain things. I personally do not like the names of these countries and what these people fly as flags and stuff, because it's not a choice that you have made, and it's not almost like a God-given thing that you need to sit here and actually become patriotic about, especially when you could get neutralized from one country to the other by changing your citizenship. So it's just a big game of who has more superiority over others based on a book or based on a flag. And yet the person who in the highest authority is the one dictating which one's a third world country or a first world country, or can have a strong passport or a weak passport. It's a way to punish the population, is just so that they could keep control. But they have to program you at a young age to love these names, like these names of the countries like America, Syria, Lebanon, Germany, China, all these names and their flags, they're just bombarded at you. And these individuals like to start to now, who are very patriotic, to compare people's lives based on these ideologies of citizenship and what your flag is and who your passport is and what you're supposed to represent. But unfortunately, this is against what the Quran is telling us, because we as a people, we should be one people. If you want to recognize regions by certain features and certain things and have certain flags, that's understandable. But you yourself should not be attached to that flag, nor should you be attached to those names, because those are variable. Those keep changing, as they did change in throughout history. But you have to start to recognize that this programming is there set upon you, so that you start giving allegiances to certain things. So when certain disasters happen or certain people want to destroy in the world, they can use you as cannon fodder, pretty much. And that's where I believe this verse is extremely important, because you have to recognize these superstitions that people tell you, and you have to recognize the evil power. So you do not follow things that you have no knowledge in, and then you start to associate to God and it's not forgiven. Nor are you sitting here helping somebody who's going to go to hell, and then you find yourself next to him, because you are a person who's literally assisting the person who's corrupting on earth, thinking that you're doing good. These are concepts that push you to ponder upon yourself so you don't make errors. This is why the Quran is very important for us to open our eyes and to see who we are. Life is extremely short, so you make sure that you're doing the right thing so that when you get to the eternal life, you're in a position where things do not bother you and you are in a position where you are already dedicated to your Lord for serving your God, because everything around us, just the majority of it is decorations of a devil. With that said, all praise to our Lord, the Lord of the worlds, and peace be upon you.